There's a right-wing think tank known as the Heartland Institute, and it is funded by the Koch brothers, and it's also funded by Microsoft and some of the largest corporations in the United States. Right now, they are working with a coal industry consultant by the name of David Wojcik in order to create curriculum for grade school students that would cast doubt on climate change. All right. So, of course, the Koch brothers, they have a history of funding scientists so scientists could publish these studies that cast doubt on climate change. And now they're trying to indoctrinate the youth with fake information, basically saying that the idea of climate change is still controversial. There hasn't been any real agreement as to whether or not it exists. So basically, they're trying to make kids think that climate change isn't a reality.
And look, we've talked about this so many times before. The psychological principle of projection is the Rosetta Stone to understanding Republicans. So what do Republicans do? They talk about, oh, the liberals are trying to brainwash our kids with propaganda. What does that mean? That means they want to brainwash our kids with propaganda. And here, this is the perfect example. Koch brothers is in the oil refinery business. They're the ones who are most guilty of putting the things in the air that cause global warming and climate change. So what do they want to do? They want to brainwash kids by buying their way into the educational system to get them to believe that it doesn't exist, even though 97% of scientists in the world agree. They say, who cares? Let's buy the other 3% and make sure we spoon feed it to the kids as propaganda so that we can continue to pollute the environment, cause climate change, and make an extra nickel and a dime, because that's what the Koch brothers ultimately only care about.
The Heartland Institute, this right-wing think tank, has paid scientists approximately $300,000 a year in order to work on a series called Climate Change Reconsidered, okay? And again, this is the same idea that the Koch brothers have, basically funding these fake scientists to release all of this fake data about how climate change doesn't really exist. So you gotta know, when you're reading this literature, you gotta know where it comes from, and you gotta understand whether or not it's a reliable source.
You know, oftentimes we talk about who's funding the research, et cetera, and I've heard people say like, oh, Cenk, why do you keep emphasizing that? Because it's, of course, enormously relevant. Where do you get your money? If you are paid by these corporations who have a vested financial interest to make sure that they can continue to pollute, right? And you will look at that, whoa, what a wild coincidence. It turns out you do a research paper that shows that that pollution is not really pollution. Climate change that everybody else is tracking somehow doesn't exist. Well, obviously you question their motivation. And you should be extremely careful when they're trying to teach it to our kids in high schools. It's outrageous.